Good evening and welcome back to the OBX wave report after a bit of a hiatus when I was only able to film OBX wave report briefs remotely from the deck of the Norwegian Jade, Norwegian Jade, and at various island locations across the Atlantic, as the Wi-Fi situation on my recent cruise across the Atlantic was pretty sparse. But I must say that it is fan-frickin-tastic to be back in the Outer Banks, looking at yet another epic sunset here to the west, and expecting some holy cow. Oh man, beautiful. Birds just take flight in the evening time. Totally unexpected here at Jeanette's Pier, and this is one of the wonderful things that we can experience here in the Outer Banks. But okay, so as I was saying, potentially some semi-epic swells on the way as a coastal low is developing off of Florida in the Bahamas Straits. It's expected to track north and eastward and pump up a 4 to 8 foot series of waves here in the Outer Banks. Might be choppy in some locations, might be clean in others by the weekend. We'll get into that in a little bit more detail as we continue this OBX wave report for November the 16th, Thursday, November the 16th. Right now here at Nag's Head, we've got 1, 2, maybe some 2-footers, I'd say 1 foot plus, and semi-glassy here at Jeanette's Pier in Nag's Head. No surfers out there enjoying the waves. I did see a pelican bobbing in the surf. The water temperatures have gotten colder, so surfers are more scarce as the water temperatures get colder here in the Outer Banks, and especially as we move away from summertime. We've got an east-northeast swell at 7 seconds and 1.8 foot. East-northeast winds also blowing at 7 miles per hour. Air temperatures 62 degrees. Ocean water temperatures 60, right there at the 60-degree mark. So cooling down considerably. You're going to be wanting your gloves and your booties on your 32mm wetsuit, possibly even a hood, depending on how resilient you are to the cold. We got a high tide this evening at 9:18 p.m. in Nag's Head. A little bit further to our south in Rodanthe, we got some 2-foot waves, slightly choppy conditions with a southeast swell at 1.5 foot in 9 seconds. Northeast winds at 10 miles per hour, chopping up those waves a little bit. Air temperature 62, and ocean water temperatures also at 62 degrees down there at Rodanthe. Also looking toward a high tide this evening at 10 p.m. Buxton right now 2 to 3 foot and choppy with a southeast swell at 2.2 foot and 10 seconds. East-northeast winds at 10 miles per hour. 66 degree Fahrenheit air temperatures, 65 degree water temperatures. High tide this evening about 9:15 p.m. Okay, so let's talk forecast. Right now, we expect the surf to be building through Friday and into the weekend, with the surf building up to 4 to 8 foot by Saturday across the Outer Banks, with some northeast winds generally chopping up the surf on the more northerly beaches, but with the potential to generate some relatively clean surf on the more southerly beaches from about Avon Pier on southward through Frisco. And the primary wave generator is a gale that is developing in the Straits of Florida, between Florida and the Bahamas right now, expected to track off toward the north and east. You can start to feel those winds blowing off the North Atlantic Ocean, although right now it's very mild and very gentle, although the winds will pick up through tomorrow as the waves do as well. And then by weekend, we're expecting to see those 4 to 8 foot waves arrive. And then the other system that we are looking at, of course, all this weather information provided by the National Hurricane Center, the National Weather Service, and wave data provided by local observations, as well as the Wave Watch 3 wave model. But according to our friends at the National Hurricane Center, we are looking at a potential tropical cyclone developing in the Caribbean. This system has a 70% chance of becoming a tropical depression over the next few days. The system is expected to track toward the north and northeast toward Cuba, the Dominican Republic, and the Bahamas, and we could have yet another named tropical cyclone here by mid to late November as we approach Thanksgiving. So we might want to keep our eyes peeled, as water temperatures down there in the tropics still able to support tropical storm and tropical depression, and even hurricane should it, or even a hurricane should it develop. So something to keep an eye on for the longer term as we move forward. Okay, so that will conclude this session of the OBX wave report for our wave observations. I did want to provide a comment on my experience for my cruise, just very briefly, as I often talk about climate change. We did fly over to England through a massive storm. We landed in Gatwick Airport near London, in between squall cells, and just before we landed there were 100-mile-an-hour winds near the airport. We landed, we went to a pub. The pub was on a riverbank that was basically flooding, so the whole back of the pub was flooding. And then the subsequent day we flew south to Portugal, got on our cruise, went to our first island location off of Portugal, and then we were preparing to sail off to the Azores. Sail being a descriptive term, of course. It was a powered vessel, and we were about to make our way toward the Azores when our trip to the Azores was canceled due to high seas. And one of the vessels that was headed toward the Azores, or headed from the Azores to England on the same day that we were scheduled to head toward the Azores, got hit with some massive waves, 45-foot significant wave heights in the region just north of the Azores, between the Azores and England. And 100 people on that cruise ship were injured. So I was unable to surf in the Azores, unfortunately, and so instead was treated to a very long and leisurely cruise in the beautiful subtropical Atlantic, which was very warm and very nice. We were able to swim in the swimming pools and enjoy the deck quite a lot of the Norwegian Jade, and finally got to Bermuda. And Bermuda was also pretty stormy. And then as we were touring Bermuda, Bermuda not a very good wave spot, because Bermuda is surrounded by a large reef that just dampens most of the wave action. So no surfing in Bermuda for me, no good waves in Bermuda when I was there. But the guides that we hired to show us Bermuda on our little one-day tour couldn't stop talking about the number of hurricanes that had affected Bermuda this year. 6 tropical storms and hurricanes this year affecting Bermuda, which is unprecedented, and they're getting like some record rains as a result. And then finally, at the end of our cruise, we come into New York City, and New York City, all the leaves are still on the trees, and I mean, there's some of the trees are changing colors, but this time of year in mid-November in New York City, you expect the leaves to be pretty much completely gone, and most of the trees there still had their leaves. So from one side of the Atlantic to the other, signs of climate change on this cruise. Very disappointed about not being able to surf in the Azores, but nonetheless quite the experience sailing across a much more stormy North Atlantic than is historically recorded. So the ocean is getting much stormier, particularly this year due to much warmer than normal conditions. And we just experienced it ourselves this year on our 20th anniversary cruise. Kat and I, it's still a wonderful cruise, but did run into some rough weather throughout the cruise. So, all right, so thank you for joining me once again for this session of the OBX Wave Report. And I'll just briefly ask you guys to please do everything you can to help protect our beautiful coastlines from the impacts of climate change, which are really starting to ramp up. The primary method right now is to mass deploy that clean energy, get as much of that clean energy out there as we can as the bergs once again take flight here at Jeanette's Pier. I will be getting into the water soon, hopefully tomorrow. I've got to manage my house. We've got some car repairs to take care of, but hopefully I got to get some new tires on the Tesla. Hopefully once that happens, I can get in the water and get back to enjoying the water with you guys. So thank you for joining me once again, and we will be back to our regular wave reports up and down the Outer Banks. I look forward to chatting with you soon.